thank you for having me in your lovely studio.
Thank you for coming.
My second visit now. And so, kind of tell us how you got to the point where you've kind of made your own studio and are doing bigger things now as well.
Right. Wow, such a long story. So I used to work in corporate. My last job was at the airport. Right. But even before the airport job, I have been flipping and flopping. So I usually work for a year or two, and then I would resign. My employees don't like it, but anyway, I would resign and I would go off to some retreat. Maybe in India, maybe in Thailand, maybe in Nepal, right? I would go for 2-3 months. And then when the financial situation sort of when the money ran out, basically, then I have to come back and I'll find another job. And then I'll work for 2 years, 3 years, sometimes less than that. And then I'll resign and then I'll go off again. So this pattern basically demonstrates that I don't want to be in the corporate world, right? So I can do it because I have all the academic qualifications and all that for it. And people keep hiring me because they know I can do the job. But deep inside my heart, I really don't think my life is meant to be in front of a desk, in a computer, working till 9 to 6, 9 to 7, nowadays 9 to 9. And then constantly look forward to the weekends, have a blast over the weekend, get drunk, go party, and then return to that same desk again. So this pattern really doesn't work for me. But as you know, Hong Kong is an expensive place. Unless you win the lottery, unless your dad had a lot of money, you basically don't have a choice but to find some sort of income, right? So my pattern was for as long as 10 years or 12 years, work, save up some money, go do what you want to do, come back and work again, save up some money, go what you want to do. But at some point, I know it's not sustainable, right? Because I'm getting older, and I also want to have more security financially. So I just have to find that balance. Do I now just give up and just go work for a company until I retire, and then do what I want to do after I retire, right? Or should I now do whatever I wanted to do all along and forget about the rat race? Right. So obviously I chose the latter option. It's not easy, not only financially, but it's just that determination. I always use the image of one jumping off the cliff. It really felt like that. Right? So you're at the edge of the cliff. Either you go back or you jump and you hope the wings will spread in time for you to fly and sail.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's really that kind of jumping over the cliff kind of motivation. So I started looking around in the neighborhood because I like Central. I started looking around the neighborhood just to see what the pricings are like. So I did my calculations, and I think I can manage with this kind of a size where I can put in a reasonable fit out, because I don't want like the bland fit out with just a few curtains and paint the wall white. So I want to be at least a reasonably decorated place.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you do this yourself as well?
I have a designer friend who worked on this together with me.
Wow.
So we went through thousands and thousands of photos and selected this one in the end.
Oh.
Yeah. So this is where I am now. I've been open for nearly 2 years. But for the past 2 years, I've been closed
It's been tough
multiple times, right? But that's already part of the calculation. Because I started in the third wave.
Okay.
Yeah, so I thought...
Carefully measured out.
All carefully measured out. Even if I had to close, even if I had to this and that, I wouldn't have to go bankrupt immediately, right? It still affected the business, obviously. But I still had the Zoom classes, the outdoor classes that kept me afloat.
I mean, it's kind of who can adapt the fastest and to each wave, and you will have been so kind of used to switching between the corporate world and retreats.
Yeah.
And so that must be super disruptive.
Yeah.
And so that probably helped you quite a bit.
Yes.
With COVID and those changes. But like, what are the kind of main differences? Because those are complete kind of black and white, corporate, the finance world and yoga retreats and, meditation. So kind of, what was that like?
It's all about what you really want and what you really need. So to me, the corporate world is really just about finances. I do love my colleagues, so I do have the joy of working together with them. But the actual product or the actual output at the in the company, I don't really take pride in it. I can still deliver whatever they wanted me to deliver, but I don't feel attached to it. I don't have any passion. I don't have any passion for it, right? It sounds like I'm just doing a mediocre job, but I can tell you I'm not. I wasn't doing a mediocre job. I was still doing the overtime, like that is so prevalent in this society, right? So I still give it 100% because I'm paid to do it, right? But the heart is not there, right? So, but when I go on a retreat, it's like the heart opens up, and I get to totally be with the body, be with the mind, and I just connect with nature. Yeah. So there are two kinds of retreats. One is yoga retreat, where it's more physical. You go through the practices of the physical hatha yoga. Right. The other kind of retreat is a meditation retreat, where you practice meditation the whole time, right? And for these retreats to be effective, usually you have to go for at least 1 month.
Wow. Okay.
Right. So the 8 days, 7 days kind of retreat is nice, but it doesn't let you go as deep as the longer retreats.
Right. And you wouldn't worry at all about kind of your own finances at the time. You just completely zen, or what was it? What were your kind of thoughts going into that? Like, and what did it actually look like, I suppose?
Well, one reason why I had to resign is particularly for the fact that I don't have to worry about it.
Right.
So I don't have to be disrupted by whatever might be going on back at the company, right? So once I resign, I cut it off. Right. So that helps a lot. But nevertheless, the mind is still very busy. I mean, if you ever try to meditate for even a few minutes, the first insight that everyone will have is that the mind is so busy.
Yeah.
In fact, it's kind of like a thundering kind of busyness. It's so loud. That's what I recognized in my very first retreat. I was like, okay, this nice environment, green grass everywhere, no tall buildings, only animals running around. I'm gonna have peace, right? But as soon as I close my eyes, the sound inside that mind is so loud. It's really just like lightning and thundering going on within the head. So I know I have work to do. Yeah. But as you continue to practice, over time you understand the mind better. And this is what meditation is all about. It's just to understand the mind better. If you understand the mind better, you understand yourself better.
Yeah. I mean, you've done a lot of research, a lot of years in school, kind of learning about. You've done on like Buddhism.
Yeah. I've done the master's course in Buddhism, Buddhist studies. So this is more like the textual studies.
Right.
You look at the scriptures. And then you try to understand the scriptures, and then you write essays and papers on it.
Right.
And now I'm doing a Master of Buddhist Counseling, right? So it's more on the mental health stream, just like a counselor, but using Buddhist principles as the background to do the counseling.
I've never heard of a Buddhist counselor before.
Yeah, it's very new.
Right.
Honestly, I think Hong Kong, you might have been. It's probably one of the top 3 to 5 pioneers in Buddhist counseling.
So what do these retreats look like day to day? You said they're a month long? They're the ones that you went to? Or
the ones I prefer are a month long, but you can also go to the shorter ones that are like 10 days, because most people cannot just resign.
Yeah.
like
a long time.
right, isn't it? Like most people can only spend, at most 2 weeks away from their jobs. So many of the retreats are designed to be 10 days. So let's say for a 10-day standard retreat, the daily schedule is pretty much fixed. So typically you wake up around 4. Some retreats are 4, some are 4:30.
4 a.m.
Yeah, 4 a.m. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Definitely before sunrise. Right. And there's a reason for that, because at that time the atmosphere is very calm, as you can imagine. Right. So most people are asleep. Even the animals are asleep.
Yeah.
So there are no birds chirping at 4. Yeah, they start around 4:30, 4:45, or 5. Right. So you get the entire peaceful planet to yourself at that time. So everything is calm, the mind is calm, the atmosphere is calm. So it's really conducive to meditation at that hour.
Right.
So usually the retreats will start with a brief sit. Some retreat would then go on to a chanting session. Because I usually go to the Buddhist retreats, and they normally go for the loving kindness chant. So it's a half an hour chant.
Half an hour.
You get to read from a book, so you don't have to memorize.
Okay, I was gonna say.
Yeah. Unless you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's about sending loving kindness to yourself, to your neighbors, to everyone who is now practicing in the retreat center, and so on. Right. So just to put your heart and mind in a compassionate state.
Right.
So it's like sets the tone for the rest of the day. And some retreats, they instead of having a chant, they will have a reading. Right. So they will have someone volunteer to read that morning, like a passage or poem, also just to set the mind in the right direction for the day. And then you will go into the practice. Right? So the practice will alternate between sitting and standing. Right? So most people cannot sit all day.
Yeah.
So it's very smart for the organizers to switch between sitting and standing.
Right.
So some retreats are 45-minute sessions. Some are 1 hour long. Right. So basically, you sit for 1 hour, you walk for 1 hour, you sit for 1 hour.
Oh my goodness.
You walk for 1 hour. Yeah. And of course, they teach you the techniques.
Okay.
It's not just like randomly walking.
Well, what are the kind of techniques that you?
So it's all about mindfulness, right? In the seated meditation, again, depending on the retreat center, the most common method is to observe the breathing. Right. So inhale, you know you're inhaling. Exhale, you know you're exhaling. And for the entire hour, you try to focus on the breath. Right. But that sounds simple. Well, it is simple, but it's not so easy. Right. So like I said, the mind immediately goes off in a tangent. Sometimes for maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you would have gone on your wandering journey.
Right, okay.
You have gone everywhere around, back in history to the future, ruminations, fantasies. It's very interesting. But as soon as you become aware of this wandering mind, you bring it back to the breath.
Right.
So this is the most standard breath retreat.
Okay.
Right? You just keep doing that. And it takes really up to 10 days before you can feel that you're coming under some kind of calm, some kind of control, that you are moderately able to focus on the breath. So this is the breath meditation retreat. In some other retreats, they go for the choiceless awareness. So this is a directed awareness. You're only focusing on one thing. There's another type of retreat, they go for choiceless awareness, that if your mind wander, you are allowed to notice the wandering mind, not to go into the content of the thoughts,
Right.
but just to realize
Be aware. Yeah.
you have gone to the wandering, and then you bring it back.
Right.
Let's say suddenly there's a pain in the knee, in your knee. You are allowed to move your awareness to the pain.
Okay.
And you observe that pain for a while. Either it will dissipate, either it will get worse, whatever. And then slowly you come back. And let's say there's suddenly an itch in your neck, right? And then you have to notice your intention is immediately to scratch it.
Right.
Because that's what we do, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Literally, you saying that has made me want to scratch my neck. I'm not even kidding. Like, my hair is there, and now like, my awareness was genuinely brought to that.
Exactly.
Funny.
Because without such trainings, we just do whatever we want to do.
Right.
Let's say the knee is in pain, we just kick it out.
Right.
There's a scratch. Okay, let's just scratch it.
Just impulsive
Just
creatures.
impulsive. Right? But if we do practice, we observe it first. See where the itch comes from, whether it gets worse, whether it dissipates. Most of the time, it goes away,
Yeah.
and then the whole drama just falls away.
Yeah.
And then you can come back to the breath. The interesting thing is that you might find this very stupid and like, what's the point of all this? Slowly, it extends to your life.
And you see it transfer.
Yes. Even in your life, you do things impulsively. You see a cheesecake, you just eat it, right? You are angry at somebody, and you just shout out some foul language, like Will Smith. You know, at that moment the fire came up.
Yeah, just
no control. You just had to do it.
Yeah.
Right. But if we have this kind of training, this kind of practice, the practice is always within us, then you make space between the stimulus and the reaction.
Right.
So it's all about creating this space. Then you have room to decide whether to act on it, whether to let it go, or whether to work on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you kind of make those decisions, I suppose? Say, for example, you have pain in your knee.
Yeah.
How do you know whether or not you should work on it or let it go? I guess in a more like kind of real life situation, maybe you got into a fight with someone, a disagreement. How do you know? Because obviously, a lot of people's reaction is to bottle it in if you don't want to be, you don't want to start something bigger. You don't want to spark the fire, so you just hold it in. And then oftentimes it's obviously a lot, like just like working overtime all the time. It builds up. How do you know how to approach a situation?
In this kind of situation where you enter some kind of conflict with another person, the idea is not that you just hold it in and you take all the bad energies and store it up. The better approach, I think, would be to let the other person know, but in a very calm and non-judgmental way, right? So you have said something, Susan, that made me feel really hurt. So I'm not sure why you said it. Maybe because you're also hurt, or maybe you're suffering from some kind of from drama or whatever you're suffering now that cause you to say things like this. But now you're hurting me, and I'm not feeling nice about it, right? So maybe I'll take a break, and I'm just gonna go home, and we'll talk another day.
Right. Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's no need to keep it and store it for yourself, but there's also no need to fire it up and becoming a huge argument.
Which is also quite easy for people to do as well, because as you were talking about, like, we are so impulsive.
Yes.
It's easy to suddenly let out a burst of anger, just like you'd let out a burst of excitement at good news, for example. So, I mean, we kind of, I feel like, realize as humans that that it is good to be calm and kind of bring your attention to your own breathing and yourself. But there aren't many people, I guess, that would go to the extremes of waking up at 4 a.m. or going on retreats and et cetera, et cetera. So what would you kind of what would your advice be for the average person who's maybe working in the corporate world or just living very normal, mundane lives?
Yes. I think minimum 10 to 15 minutes per day is enough.
Right.
But the key is really per day, or at most skip one day.
So it's that consistency.
That consistency. And the thing is, people don't believe in it. But for those who, let's say, make a resolution, make a determination to, let's say, they do it for 1 month.
Right. Yeah.
Like everyone can do it for 1 month, right? Not forever. So let's say for this month of May, let me just do it.
Right.
From the 1st to the 30th, every day I'll commit up to 15 minutes where I'll just sit. There are so many apps and information online. I also have some recorded guided meditation, and let me just do it.
Right.
And it's even better if you can pick it do it at the same time every day. So usually people will do it in the morning before they go to work, or do it in the evening before they go to sleep. And once you find how you have changed after the 30 days for the better, then you will develop faith in the practice, and then you will carry on.
For sure.
But the trap is that most people, as soon as they sit down for the first 3 minutes, because of the loud noises that are happening in the head, they will tell themselves, okay, it's not working. It's not for me. I can't meditate. Let me just turn on my phone and scroll again. That's like my more comfortable kind of practice, right? But just go slightly beyond that comfort zone.
Yeah.
It's not an overwhelming zone. It's just a challenging zone. Go slightly beyond. So today is 3 minutes. Tomorrow 4. Go slightly beyond.
Okay.
You'll be very surprised that that noisy environment in the mind, it will slowly dissipate, provided you put in the 15 minutes of effort every day.
I mean, it is so important, right, to start the day off well. I did, this is very short, but 7 days of just waking up, trying to get out and watch the sunset, and just doing like a little bit of kind of meditation. Guided with, sunrise.
Yeah.
And I mean, even such a small task as that kind of did actually take quite a bit of effort.
Yeah.
But I did definitely feel the effects afterwards. So I mean, I guess what you're trying to, spread and teach to other people, so that they can also experience those benefits.
Yes, because I'm enjoying this kind of a mindful living kind of a lifestyle. And the people who come to my classes almost always carry the same burdens and stresses with them from their work. Everyone has difficulty sleeping. If they manage to fall asleep, they wake up in the middle of the night. Everyone has tension in the neck and the shoulders. So it's all the same, the symptoms, and it's all coming from the stresses from their lives, right? But yet they know they need to do something about it, right? That's why they come here. So if only more people would kind of devote part of their day to some kind of mindfulness or yogic practices, then it will slowly improve their well-being and improve their lives and improve their health.
For sure.
Yeah.
How do you suppose you kind of get that message across to people that maybe haven't had that realization? Because when you're caught up in all of it, it's hard to see that, maybe if I just put aside X amount of time, I'll reap so many benefits.
Yes. I think it's our jobs as instructors in the wellness industry to stress that this practice is more about preventative, not medicine, but preventative habits, preventing the actual onset of problems. like before you get too stressed, before your body gets so stiff, before you actually need medicine, start doing these kind of practices. So yeah, and that will at least delay the onset of the more problematic issues.
I mean, the same goes for sport, where people say, do the prehab before you have to do the rehab because you've been injured.
Exactly.
And like a lot of older players have kind of realized that in sport, try to get that message across. But of course, growing up, you're so overwhelmed that you kind of know that you should do it, but it's about actually getting started.
So someone around them should hopefully be able to inspire.
Right.
Yeah. That's a very good point you pointed out. So I'm more on the mental side, but actually it's the same as the physical side. So it's physical and mental well-being, right? So for physical well-being, you move the body, you do your cardio, you do your weights, right? As a way to prevent the future issues like the cardiovascular diseases, high blood pressure, diabetes and all that, right?
Yeah.
So it's exactly the same on the mental side. Doing the mental practices prevents the depression, prevents the any kind of sadness, all these mental issues that may surface when things don't go, when things go astray.
Absolutely.
Like COVID, right? So many people became depressed and sad and all that because of COVID.
Yeah.
But had we all been developing the mental muscles in the face of these crisis situation, we really have more resilience to handle these situations.
It does make sense, right? Like when people say it's really good if you go out and walk for 15 or to 30 minutes, like even doctors will say that, but why are doctors not saying it's really beneficial if you do 15 to 30 minutes of meditation a day?
Yeah.
Just focusing on yourself, because a lot of people, obviously it's wake up, go on your phone, and you're instantly just replying to other people and worrying about other people's problems rather than, I guess, your own.
Yes.
It's good to, I guess, a lot of people experience all sorts growing up. I mean, you had a very interesting childhood growing up in Nigeria.
Right.
But I mean, of course, that would come with its own, struggles.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess a lot of adulthood is kind of trying to understand yourself better from what you've experienced.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you experienced so many things as a child that you don't necessarily remember.
Mm-hmm.
And so how much of the mental side do you think is kind of resolving the own conflicts in your childhood and your past?
I have to say I'm quite fortunate that my parents really provided well for me. The bit about growing up in Nigeria was really a blessing.
Right.
A blessing, right? So it's back then. It's the early 80s. You're probably not born yet. So I mean, honestly, Africa doesn't really have a good reputation in terms of their political environment. But back then, things were a bit better. The society, the natural landscape, things were very natural to begin with. So I was really fortunate to be able to grow in that kind of like a calm and serene sort of landscape. And growing up with Nigerians at an early age, I was already used to multicultural interactions. Right. And then and as I grew older, I went to school in the US. So I can't fault my parents for anything.
Right.
Yeah. So so the path that I've chosen to walk on, the mental path, is not really to reconcile anything that happened in my childhood.
Okay.
It's really something that comes from within.
Right.
Because I asked the question, why, what is life all about? Yeah, and why do people have to be subjected to the rat race, be subjected to the stress, to earn money, and use the money to repair their health, or use the money to go for feasts and elaborate dinners and luxurious vacations, as if they are now paying off the stresses that have been brought upon in the first place, right?
Sure.
So instead of doing this roller coaster ride, just compensating. I had such difficult times at work, so difficult stresses. Let me just compensate and splurge in my next vacation and my next holiday, only to come back and build up the stresses and strains again, and then let me just splurge and have fun and do whatever, right? So instead of this kind of lifestyle, I question it, right? So isn't there another way where life can be slightly more under your own control, right? But it's all for me.
Right.
So the way I speak it is as if I am I'm criticizing, the corporate life, but it's just for me.
For sure.
It honestly doesn't work.
I mean, I think for a lot of people, they definitely feel similar. It's just they haven't taken that leap.
Yes.
Yes.
And there's so much into it because there's obviously the financial rewards. There's also status. Right. Because one reason why you're in the corporate world is that you climb the corporate ladder.
Yeah.
And slowly you become recognized as the director of some company, or later on some CEO, CFO. So you also enjoy that status, right, of being somebody. Right. So that's another reason I think why it's hard to leave the rat race.
It's human greed and just always wanting more. Then you kind of realize, it's quite interesting because oftentimes you'll look at the people in the world that have the least amount and somehow seem the happiest.
Yes.
And I guess that's kind of where a lot of the practice stems from, that idea of you don't need much to actually be content.
Right. It goes back to the question, what you need. And that's the question I ask myself. What do I need?
Right.
So the answer was clearly, I don't need to be the CEO of some Fortune 500 company. That's very clear, right? But I still need to have some kind of financial support in order to keep this running.
Right.
This is a reality of life that I think everyone understands. Yeah. So.
I mean, finance is a bit of a sticky subject with a lot of people. I mean, sometimes it's like, well, maybe if everyone was just super open about it, then maybe we'd be more educated and less. I mean, at school you don't even learn much about finances or like how to do taxes and that kind of thing. And I think that's really important. And then you kind of thrown out there and you're like, now figure out the U.S. tax system and all that. So, I mean,
because the third wing of the well-being landscape is financial well-being.
Really? Oh, okay.
Because we all know that we need money to survive.
Yeah.
So indeed, you're right again, that the schools should give more training for the young kids as to how they should slowly think about how finances should be managed. When they grow, not just to earn as much money as possible, because that's usually the instruction.
Yeah.
Just make lots of money, and then you'll be fine.
It's not even sustainable.
Exactly.
I mean, mentally and like you kind of get there and you're like, now what? I think there's actually a chart that graphs happiness against wealth, and it reaches a point where it just plateaus because after you've earned a certain amount, like it's not you can buy anything you want in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So true, physical, mental, financial well-being. Basically, it's how to hack the system.
Yeah. I mean, like just talking about the highs and lows. I mean, obviously you're not pointing fingers and going, you're doing this wrong, but just for so many people out there, there is this kind of vibe that is just like looking forward to the weekend type thing, and you kind of accept the reality of being at those lows during the week, and then you just really search for those highs. And so, like drugs and alcohol, for example, give those super high highs, and then of course, unsurprisingly, you drop super low. So, what's your kind of advice to kind of anyone who's experiencing that kind of struggle?
Balance it out. If you think you enjoy, then nothing stops you from continuing on this path. But I think most people at some point, they will realize that's not sustainable.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe they don't even have to go do drugs. Just the fact that the first 4 days of the week, I'm just like in a dream state, and I'm just looking for the 5th day and the 6th day of the week. And on the Sunday evening, I'm already depressed. And Monday, I barely can get out of bed. So I'm just hoping people would realize that this is not how you want to spend your next 30, 40 years. So if you have that realization, then hopefully you would find ways to balance it out.
Right.
Yeah. So put in some of the fun into your weekdays and do something more meaningful and more educational also on the weekends.
Right.
So just to kind of streamline it out.
To a lot of people, that is like sort of their meaningful social activity, or for many, it's gaming, for example. That's their main social activity or way of relaxing. But what's your kind of? I mean, I was actually talking to my dad the other day about what alternatives could there be for young people, because for young people, it's you're thrown into university and it's like, right now you can drink, you're of age, and here are a bunch of parties and bars you can go to. There's not I always wish at like during my teens that there were retreats that were encouraged. Here you can meet people in a different environment where you can chill, get to know each other better, and get to know yourself better without the use of other substances. But I guess it's just, how do we find that alternative, and how can it suddenly be globalized so everyone has this sort of epiphany that, oh, maybe we were doing it wrong,
But I think the society is better now. The resources are much more available than 20 years ago.
Right.
All these apps about meditation, mindfulness, they weren't existent 20 years ago. But obviously now they have become so prevalent that it's commercialized.
Right.
It's always like that, right? So long as something a bit sacred and noble come to the surface, and then quickly people would commercialize it and become just another product.
Right.
Yeah, but at least they are more easily accessible.
Sure.
And so people don't feel the peer pressure to always go down the route of drinking and partying. So there are always a group of people who are more into the so-called the deeper stuff.
Right. Well, thank you so much for joining on the Never Too Late to Be Great podcast. It's been awesome talking and finding out more about yoga, meditation, and the different aspects of wellness. Correct. So thank you. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.